In today's lecture, we will focus on film and music. Now, in my opinion, the relation between these two can best be understood through the use of two prepositions, in and for, whereby we get two phrases, music for films and music in films. Film music refers to both. Film music can be defined as a music used in a film, applied in a film, used in the context of a film. While making a film, the director approaches a music composer to create certain music pieces or songs which he thinks are required for his own film. So, seen from this perspective, it can be defined as a music which comes to exist only in context of a film. It doesn't exist before. But then such assumptions would be erroneous because we have seen the use of Robindra Songit in several Bengali films. Robindra Songit is certainly not a film music in the sense that they were not created for a film. They are pre-existing musical compositions. A filmmaker who thinks that he needs Robindra Songit for his films later incorporates it in the film. Similarly, certain bandishes, Hindustani classical, North Indian classical bandishes and thumri have also been incorporated in several Hindi and Bengali films. The reason is, if a filmmaker thinks he needs those musical compositions for his film, he can always borrow them. So for a broader understanding of film music, one should consider film music to be any kind of music which are used in the context of a film, which are applied in a film. Now, what are the functions of music? Why do we at all need music in films? Music enhances the mood of a situation. It underlines the emotions and meanings which are being conveyed by the characters, by the dialogue, or by the particular actions in a particular sequence. Let me refer to some sequences to elaborate this point further. One can think of the Odessa Steps sequence from Sergei Eisenstein's film Battleship Potemkin. We can see in the sequence a lot of things are happening. The soldiers are marching. The crowd which are gathered on the Odessa steps, they are frightened, they are dismantling, they are running away. A woman is shot, Pram is falling off the stairs. There is an agony, there is fear, there is anxiety. The music piece composed by Edmund Meisel, which is used in this sequence, enhances the entire mood. It creates a certain kind of affect which communicates with the audience. There are certain films like psychological thriller, detective films, or horror films where music is used to increase the suspense and prepare the audience for what is going to come up. For example, in a film like Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, there are certain sequences where there are no dialogues, but something very important happens on screen. We can see the house where Norman Bates lives, and he approaches the house, slowly walks up the stairs or comes out of the house. Nothing happens in between, but the music which is applied in these sequences, it builds up the tension. It prepares the audience and adds on to the overall structure and overall emotion and message of the entire film. There is also another kind of music called the theme music. For example, if you think of James Bond films, there's a music which acts as the identifier. Even when we are not watching the film, the moment we hear the music, we know it is connected with the character of James Bond. So it is an identifier of a film. Music can also be described as a music which summarizes the story or the meaning or a mood of a particular film. For example, in Federico Fellini's La Strada and the composition, which is often described as Gelsomino's theme or the theme for the entire film, used for a film. but not necessarily it is always embedded in a film. One has to begin from the silent era when the film music was performed live by the musicians in a cinema hall. So if a film is being screened, the musicians would sit right in front of the screen with their instruments. They would look at the screen and then play the musical compositions. Peter Larson has a book called Film Music, in which he deals and he analyzes the music used in the early films. He says that we don't have much material on which we can say something conclusively about what kind of music was exactly played during the silent cinema days, but from the available advertisements, posters, and descriptions that we have, it can be summarized that two kinds of music were played. Most of the times, the musicians would play already existing compositions, classical compositions. It can be Beethoven's composition or Bach's compositions or Tchaikovsky's composition. Sometimes they would play some famous country music that they have already learned. Now, in the very early stages, the length of the film was very short. They were just film strips which were shown as a part of the variety shows. So, one piano or one violin was just enough to play along with the film. As the length of the film expanded, a fully formed band of musicians were appointed by the hall manager. And Larson gives several examples in his book to show how, if a film is running across different cinema halls at the same time, it is up to the individual hall manager to create distinct musical pieces for his theatre hall, which would be different from the other musical hall. So while the film remains the same, when the same film is being screened across the theatre halls, while the film remains the same, the musical performance changes every night. In the context of Indian cinema, poet and lyricist Gulzar says something very similar. He says that in those days, if people are watching a film, sometimes they would go up to the musician and request to play certain tunes which are always already popular. It can be a song or a particular tune or whatever. And the question of commensurability between the music and image is important because, as I have mentioned, if the film music is supposed to enhance or add to the film, then it has to tally with the on-screen images. But as we are seeing in the early cinema days, if the live musicians are performing live and it's instantaneous, then how can it tally with the images? This is a very pertinent question. Peter Larson says, again, we don't have conclusive proofs, but it can be explained by saying that if a particular band of musicians are playing with a particular film over a fortnight or a month, they automatically pick up the narrative. They know what is happening. And after having played with the film for 5 or 6 times, they decide what to play. They create certain compositions. So it is instantaneous, and at the same time, it is a kind of pre-thought. It is a little bit pre-planned. So this was a scenario of film music during the silent cinema days. What happened with the coming of talkies? When the talkies were introduced in film, the live musicians disappeared from the cinema hall. Music became internal. So if one says that during the silent cinema days, music was external, we could see the musicians, the audience could see the musicians in front of them. With the advent of the talkies, we could hear the actors singing, we could hear the musicians, we couldn't see the musicians. So actors were singers themselves. During the particular shooting, the actors would sing and dance if necessary, and the entire performance would be recorded. Now, it can best be explained through a sequence from a film called Kolonko Bhanjan by Jyotish Banerjee. If we look at the sequence, we find that it depicts Rash Leela. Krishna and Radha are sitting on a throne right in the center of the stage. They're encircled by the gopinis, the conduits. They are singing in praise of Radha and Krishna. Every time they turn towards the camera, their volume increases. And the gestures are very minimal. They're only stretching their arms as they're addressing Radha and Krishna. The moment they turn their face away from camera, their voice, the volume decreases. And we can hear the instruments more loudly than the voice. Now, why is this disparity between the voice of the singer and the instruments? It's because the musicians are sitting close to the recording instrument, which is present in the shooting spot. Now, while the actors are acting or doing the gestures, they're singing as well. Because the recording system and the technology is not that advanced, it cannot control the noise and it cannot record the voice clearly, and the entire performance has to be done at one go. You can't interrupt. So the entire performance is also live in a different sense. They're singing on spot and the entire performance is being recorded. What happened with the playback? Playback changed the scenario completely. Playback singing facilitated that the song or the music could be recorded even prior to the shooting. So in a particular studio, one can rehearse and sing the song and record the song. The song or the music becomes an autonomous track which can be taken, which can be carried to the shooting spot. So the actors do not need to sing the song themselves. They just have to lip sync. It needs to be mentioned here that during the previous stage when playback was not introduced, the actors themselves were beautiful singers. It was an imperative that actors had to be singers because they had to sing while acting. And one can think of singers like Bing Crosby or K.L. Saigal and Suraya in Indian context. They were brilliant singers. With the advent of the playback, since the actors did not have to sing themselves anymore, we see the emergence of a set of professional singers. They are called playback singers. Now, once the actors are relieved from singing themselves on spot, they can introduce certain fluid movements. You're no more worried about not moving or about singing the whole song at one go. You can interrupt your actions, which can later be sutured through editing. So what happened, a song can begin in a garden and then we can see that the singers or the actors are moving to another space and they're coming back. So the introduction of different sets of spaces and editing is a particular feature of the playback era. Let me refer to a sequence from Franz Osten film Ochut Konna. We find that a fair is going on and a performance is taking place inside a tent. The singers and the dancers, they are dancers as well, they are on stage. And a group of people have gathered to watch the performance. Through a short reverse shot, we are being shown the audience who are present, the fairground and the performers. There is no interruption to the song. There is no disparity or not much disbalance between the volume of the singers and the instrument. It is because the song has been pre-recorded. While enacting before the camera, the actors are just lip-syncing. This is why they can sing, they can dance around. As we can see that the heroine has got ankle bells and there are chorus dancers as well. They're moving across the stage. This kind of movement fluidity is introduced through playback singing. Since we are talking about playback, let me mention that playback singing continues to be a regular feature and a vibrant feature in Indian cinema. However, we don't find playback singing much in vogue in other kinds of cinema. Why is it so? It brings us to the question of the relationship between film, music and the film form, which is determined by the use of music. Now, musical is a term that we find that is applicable to the Hollywood genres. Musical is a particular genre of films where song and dance are used. Song is just one of the elements of film music, let me mention, because film music consists of background score, effect music, the music played in the credits, as well as songs. So most of the film do use these elements, but song and dance are used only in Indian cinema, very precisely Bombay films. Musicals is a particular category of Hollywood films where song and dance are used. And the whole narrative is advanced through song and dance. It is told through song and dance. In no other kind of films in Hollywood do we find the use of song, unlike Indian cinema. Now, the way musical functions is that the characters, they are speaking to each other, they break into song and come back to dialogue. It is very hard to determine songs. I mean, we do have songs, but then it is very hard to determine them because the movement between song and dialogue is much fluid. They are continuously speaking and breaking off to a song. I would like to refer to two sequences from West Side Story, which is an American musical. It is an adaptation of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. If we look at the very first sequence, we'll see the first sequence introduces the two warring clans, the Jets and the Sharks. So they're playing, they're smoking, they're strolling around their neighborhood, they're talking to people, lots of things are happening, and then they're chasing each other, they're teasing each other. The audience are introduced to these two clans and that the relationship is not very smooth. There are dialogues and suddenly they break into some dance movements. There are musical pieces. They break into a song. They come back to speak to each other. They come back to a conversation. They come back to a dialogue.
Come on. debate it.
This kind of fluid movement is a characteristic feature of the musical. Even later in the film, we find there's a sequence where all the boys and girls of both the clans are getting ready to join a dance party in the evening. They're very excited. They're discussing about what to wear and how to present themselves and, whom they want to meet and what they want to do. Now, the entire meeting and the entire planning, the way it happens, they're talking and they're singing. They're talking, they're singing. There's a continuous movement between these two. It's very hard to think about the whole sequence or to describe the whole sequence as a song sequence or just as a dialogue sequence.
I am. She talks like a parrot.
What is going on with you, Maria?
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay, and I pity any girl who's in me today.
In case of Indian cinema, this doesn't happen. Indian cinema has got specific moments where the audience can anticipate the arrival of songs, which is why we have love songs or romantic songs to depict the budding romance between the hero and the heroine. We have sad songs where the hero and heroine are parted from each other and they are singing. There are definite moments. There are moments when the entire sequence we find the dialogues, people are conversing, there are dialogues, and there are definite moments where the song and dance are supposed to appear. Now, how do we differentiate between those moments? Certain cinematic cues, filmic cues are given. One can think about a sequence from Raj Kapoor starrer CH-02 and the song sequence, it's a famous song sequence, Pyar Hua Ikrar Hua. We find that Raj and Vidya, the two central characters of the film, they're having a conversation, they're drinking tea. Raj is talking about the fact that he's very poor but he would like to have a family. He wants to propose Vidya and doesn't know how to do it. So he's just, talking, saying all these things. Suddenly, he can't complete his sentences. So he's speaking in broken sentences. And the wind and the weather changes. It becomes stormy and both the characters get tongue-tied. They leave their cup and plate and dishes and they walk away. And slowly some music is introduced. So the mise-en-scene changes. The entire staging changes. The entire acting changes. And slowly we move into a song. We know a song is approaching. A song is going to musical and an Indian cinema, though in common parlance we always refer to a Bombay film as a musical, but it's a wrong definition according to some, because musical is a particular structure where the entire story is told through song and dance. This is not the case with Indian cinema. I would conclude this section of the lecture with another example from Amol Palekar's film Thoda Sa Romani Ho Jaye. Basically, it's an audio track that you can find in the cassettes which were released when the film was released. Amol Palekar introduces the film and he specifically elaborates this particular point of musical. He says that our endeavor of making this film is a bit tricky because it is a musical. Now, you might say that most of the films are musical because we have song and dance. It is not the presence of song and dance which can justify a film to be musical. In our films, the actors talk and sing and talk. They sing whenever they want to. It's not that they have to sing only when they're falling in love or when they're parted from their lovers. Song and music is used to convey different kind of emotions, and they can break into a song which popularizes Indian films, and most of the films containing song and dance are box office success. So it can be pondered upon as to why a film with so many songs, with so much of music, is not a box office success. It is because the structure where the story is told through song and dance, where the characters are continuously singing, is not accepted. Indian audience is more akin to, more attuned with the particular structure, whether the narrative progresses for a certain point of time, it is interrupted by a song, the song and dance happens, the sequence takes place, and then the narrative resumes. So this is the structure. I would move on to certain theorizations on Indian cinema, since song and dance has been considered to be the characteristic feature of Indian cinema, and there are debates regarding why and how we should negotiate with this particular structure of Indian films. Now, within this limited scope, I'll only mention the two different views which we can gather on this particular subject. A particular group of scholars, film theorists, and critics feel that song and dance form a part of our own cultural heritage. If we look at the theatre form traditions like the folk theatre, like Tamasha, Jatra, Nautanki, there we find the stories always told through song and dance. So it is only natural that when film came into existence, it borrowed elements from these already existing forms. Some even try to establish a link between the cinema and the Natya Shastra tradition. Because in Natya Shastra, the Sanskritic plays, song and dance are continuously introduced to progress the play, to progress the story. The characters sing and dance, and the play begins with a prologue, with a song. So they feel that it is only natural that such a tradition would follow, would kind of progress and would move into a film. The other group of scholars and critics feel that song and dance do not have much to serve in Indian cinema. Why? Because they are like interruptions. They restrict the flow of the narrative. So continuing with this argument, I would like to mention that to understand the use of music in Indian cinema, it is important to look at the films of Satyajit Ray, Ritik Ghatok, Kumar Sahani. They were against the use of the music in narrative interspersed with 6 songs or 5 songs. However, they did use music in their films. For example, in Kumar Sahani's Khayal Gata, he experiments with the form of khayal. And we can also think of Satyajit Ray's films like Gupi Gayan, comedy, where he uses music, and the characters themselves are musicians. So music justifies the use of song in those kind of films. Or even in a film like Charulata, where he particularly uses Momo Chitte, Rabindra Sangeet, and aligned with that, he creates a musical piece. So towards the beginning and also throughout the film, we hear Momo Chitte. Momo Chitte gradually fades into another music piece, which becomes theme music of the film. It becomes a music to introduce Charu and Charu's world. So while on one hand we have the ongoing debates regarding the use of music in Indian cinema, and that being one of the identifying markers, and that it should be used because it comes up from our own tradition, and on the other hand we have got the debate that such use of music interrupts the narrative. These kind of debates are important, but then for a fuller understanding, we need to think about what are the functions of music in the Indian context, and how the different directors have approached music and approached the use of music, song and dance in their films. And with this, we come to the end of this discussion.